It's often said that change is a constant of life, but it's also true that some periods bring more change than others. And in 2014, the world of politics saw a stunning amount of flux across the board. In the city of Boston, Marty Walsh took over as mayor. Then, 10 months later, he led the city in mourning when former Mayor Tom Menino passed away. At the state level, Democratic Governor Deval Patrick is wrapping up his 8 years in the corner office, and Republican Charlie Baker is preparing to step in. In Washington, the GOP is getting ready to take control of the U.S. Senate in the coming days. But with veto warnings and some high-profile executive actions, President Obama is showing he doesn't consider himself a lame duck just yet. So will 2015 be as much of a roller coaster as the past 12 months have been? Joining me now to talk about some of their predictions for the year ahead are Meredith Warren, who's a member of the Massachusetts Women's Political Caucus and also a Republican political analyst, and Mara Dolan, a member of the Massachusetts Democratic State Committee and also a political analyst. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Let's start out talking Charlie Baker, because you actually have some common ground on what you expect to see from the governor-elect in 2015. Mara, let's start with you. What do you anticipate?
Well, I think the most important issue for Charlie Baker is the budget gap. The estimates are between $350 million, possibly up to $1 billion. That's a huge issue for Charlie Baker. This is taking place at a time when automatic tax cuts are about to go into effect. These are under a 2002 law that automatically cuts the income taxes of people across the board. However, the greatest benefit goes to the top 1%. Those are families earning over $743,000 a year who save over $900 a year. This adds up to $280 million a year. Well, if the budget gap is $300 million, then just that automatic tax cut could make it up. That's a huge issue for Charlie Baker.
What does Charlie Baker have to do then?
Well, Charlie Baker ran to be a manager, so he's going to have to manage the state now. The question is, how does he do that? He said he's not going to take money out of the rainy day fund. He's not going to raise taxes. He's going to have to cut, and it's the first thing that, as a Republican governor, it's going to be a very big change for the state. Someone who's going to start cutting and streamlining and really managing the state. And I think the honeymoon is going to be over with some of the legislative leaders as they want to push back. The next thing you're going to see is Charlie's going to come out with his first budget proposal, which is where all the reform is going to be. And I think the Democrats are going to be under pressure to try to either look like they're with Charlie and they want to reform some of these broken agencies, or look like they're against reform.
Well, it depends upon what you mean by reform. I mean, if reform is a code term for cutting, then that may be difficult to get Democrats in the legislature on board. But if reform means something else, and I'm not sure exactly what that would mean, then that's possible. But if it's just cutting without it being targeted and something that we know will be effective and make a difference.
Well, I frequently thought during the election that people wanted change, they wanted reform, they wanted to fix these broken state agencies and bring the budget under control.
For example,
yeah, exactly. I'm not sure people were thinking so far ahead to think what it means when a Republican is in charge of those things. The answer for Republicans is not to raise taxes. We're going to want to cut and streamline. I'm not sure people are ready for that, so we'll see what the reaction is.
So I guess you look forward to the reforms and the possible cutting with maybe gleeful anticipation. Mara's a little more concerned about.
Well, just today there was a story about people out in Western Massachusetts saying they'd love to have an office on rural policy. And what Charlie said was, I'm not a big believer in creating new state bureaucracy. So I think he will run it as a Republican, even though most of the people he's bringing to his cabinet right now are Democrats.
All right. On that note, let's talk about, Meredith, what you think is going to be a very interesting issue, the question of who fills the Democratic power vacuum now that Governor Deval Patrick is out. And
sure. I definitely think there's going to be a power vacuum. I don't think that Robert DeLeo all of a sudden is going to be a brand new House Speaker who's very active come the first day that Charlie Baker comes into the corner office.
He's not going to like you saying that, by the way. I think he'd probably call himself
well, he can prove me wrong.
All right. So you don't think it's going to be DeLeo. Who do you think it's going to be? Stan Rosenberg?
No, I don't think it's going to be Stan. I think it's going to be Maura Healey. People loved her during the campaign. I think Democrats are going to be looking at her to be the new standard bearer. And I thought it was interesting that she said she wants to open an office in the Berkshires, which is the one place Charlie Baker forgot to include in his transition team. So I'm wondering if she's already starting to think about maybe building her profile in the AG's office. Great platform for her to talk about some important public policy issues.
Mara, what do you say?
I do, of course, and it's right for her to have an office in the Berkshires. I don't see Maura Healey as stepping. Frankly, I don't know exactly what you mean by a power vacuum. Really, I literally don't know what you mean by that. We still have the Democrats controlling the House and controlling the Senate. But in terms of Maura Healey and the speculation that she's somehow positioning herself. I don't
to
think
run
so.
for governor,
To run
which
for
Meredith
governor.
totally buys,
Right. But this is someone who wants to be attorney general. That's a very important position. She's focusing on being the attorney general. Charlie Baker won, and Charlie Baker is going to be a human being as he governs. He's going to have issues that he has to deal with.
He'll be fallible.
He'll be fallible.
Right.
But I don't anticipate that Charlie Baker is going to make such a massive mistake that whoever runs against him is a shoo-in. I think the Democrats have a shot in 4 years, no question. But will the Democrat be a shoo-in? You know, unless he makes a huge mistake, no. So why should Maura Healey risk the position she has now to take a risky shot?
Hold that thought, because all this time has gone by, 3 minutes or something like that, and we haven't talked about Elizabeth Warren and her, the chatter, which I'm not going to engage in the new year, but as you pointed out, it's still 2014. The chatter that she may, in fact, run for president against Hillary Clinton. Is this going to die in 2015, do you think?
I don't see her running against Hillary Clinton. I think if Hillary doesn't run, she'd be crazy not to consider it. She's been making waves. She opposed the spending bill that was coming out, the continuing resolution. She opposed Obama's pick for the Treasury. That's a pretty big deal to come out against the president. She'd be crazy not to consider it. I don't think she runs against Hillary.
Mara?
I think the same thing. Barring unforeseen circumstances, Hillary Clinton will run, and she'll be the nominee. In order for Elizabeth Warren to beat Hillary Clinton, she'd have to win in red state primaries. I don't see her doing that.
Yeah.
She's not even ahead in New Hampshire, which is, of course, bordering Massachusetts.
All right, Marty Walsh, you think that Marty Walsh is going to have to, I'm going to paraphrase here, sharpen up his game in 2015?
I think you're going to see him start to define himself a little bit more. I think so far he's really been sort of reactionary. He's going to have to start being more proactive. I think people assume he's mayor for 20 years now, like Menino was. He's not. He's going to have to start building a record to run on the next time around to try to get another term, and I think he's going to start thinking about that.
And you say avoiding things like that Long Island Bridge closure, which didn't make his administration look great, right?
I don't think he wants to get caught flat-footed again. If you last week he actually came out with a new proposal. He's negotiating with Boston Public Schools to try to make the Boston school day longer by 40 minutes.
Which is
so I think that's a big proactive move, and you'll see more of that from Marty.
All right, Mara.
I don't think that's a new thing at all. Marty Walsh talked about expanding the school day when he was running for mayor, and he said he had an agreement with the president of the Boston Teachers Union that they were going to be able to do that. Marty Walsh has always been and will continue to be a collaborator, and I think that is proactive.
All right, casinos. Mara, you say the Everett Casino is doomed, right?
Well, I don't know if I went so far as to say it's doomed, but I think casinos are starting to crumble under their own weight. There was a supplemental amendment that was passed by the Massachusetts Senate the morning of Christmas Eve to allow ATMs in casinos. This is something that Deval Patrick specifically said would not happen in Massachusetts. These are something that encourage people to follow their losses. It's where the casinos get most of their money.
But you are pessimistic, right, about Steve Wynn's casino opening on time, maybe opening at all? You think we might not even get 2 casinos in the state?
I think Steve Wynn is a little pessimistic himself, because why else would he come out with all of this publicity and say, look, I'm changing the design and I'm bringing in this huge Jeff Koons sculpture
and I own the Maltese
Popeye
Falcon.
And the Maltese Falcon. I mean, come on. If people were really sold in casinos already, why would he try to sweeten the pot with stuff like that? And I don't think it's going to work. I think it's going to be very problematic.
Well, I agree that I think people will have buyer's remorse. I don't think they're going to like what they see coming out of casinos. And the other thing is, I think people that voted for them think they're going to see something really quick. They're saying that Wynn Casino in Everett's not even going to open until 2017. That is so far away.
And a lot of frustrating construction delays as someone who drives by there.
Traffic.
All right, of course, another idea on the table is giving substantive pay raises to top Massachusetts lawmakers. Governor Deval Patrick has just 9 days left to decide whether to make the move, as recently recommended by a state commission. Among the other recommendations they made was a pay increase for the governor. And as WGBH News reporter Stephanie Leiden tells us right now, top state officials are far from the top earners in Massachusetts.
I expected that serving as your governor would be the great honor of my professional life.
It's the top job in state government, so you might think the governor earns the top paycheck. Far from it. The governor's job pays just over $150,000. More than 1,000 other state employees make more, including his own chief of staff. Top brass at the state police earn north of $200,000 a year, and in the Department of Public Health, 5 people, all medical doctors, earn over $200,000.
The notion that the CEO is earning less than 1,254 employees of that institution that he leads just defies common sense and good management practices.
Ira Jackson, dean of UMass Boston's McCormick School, chaired a 7-member commission of business and public policy leaders that recommends raising the governor's pay to $185,000. The 90-page report also recommends pay hikes for the state's 7 other constitutional offices.
This change would make the Speaker of the House and the Senate President the 2 highest paid legislators of that kind in the country.
Jim Sturgios of the Pioneer Institute takes issue with how the commission compared the salaries of Massachusetts officials to other states.
If you take an all-in approach, you include all the states, not just ones that were cherry-picked by the commission. The fact is the level of compensation for our constitutional officers is very much in line with states that are comparable.
But if you're looking for the real money in state government, it's not at the State House. The top 50 best paid jobs in Massachusetts are all within the University of Massachusetts system.
The top earner among state employees, Derek Kellogg, coach of the UMass men's basketball team. His 2014 compensation, a cool $1.1 million. UMass officials say some of the coach's salary is funded by sources other than taxpayers and that a winning team brings in money to the university. And while no one is talking million-dollar salaries for elected officials,
We knew it would be controversial.
Ira Jackson agrees with the critics on one thing. The timing of this report couldn't have been worse, unveiled as the state grapples with a $750 million budget gap. Any salary hikes need to be approved by the legislature and signed by the governor.
What are the odds that your recommendations will be implemented?
Well, in this legislative session, 0.
Stephanie Leyden, WGBH News.
All right, guys, what do you think? Do we need higher salaries for top officials?
Nobody
Governor?
responsible for running state government right now deserves a raise. If they were in the private sector and walked into their boss's record with their record, they would be fired. They'd be laughed out of the office.
I know you're not going to buy that.
We're just
right?
going to put that aside, but the fact is, this is a terrible time to talk about raising salaries. However, let's not sweep with too broad a brush. Let's not lump everyone in with the head basketball coach. There are people at the lower levels who are making, $65,000, $55,000, $45,000, $35,000 a year. Those people perhaps should have raises. And if Charlie Baker really thinks that we have a lot of work to do on Beacon Hill, then what he ought to talk about, if he thinks that there are people who aren't working enough, give them more work. Don't lay them off.
All right, but what about people like let's say the governor? Deval Patrick's a talented guy, came from the private sector. Charlie Baker is a talented guy who came from the private sector. Isn't that evidence right there that the salary that we have right now is enough?
Yeah, I mean, I think you need good salaries to try to draw good people, but I honestly think Charlie Baker would do it for free.
Yeah.
Mitt Romney did it for free. You want people who want to serve.
What you want is people who will serve the people. And if we are electing people based on their ability to work for free, we're not going to get the best public servants. That's a dangerous precedent.
Let's leave it there. Mara Dolan, Meredith Warren, thank you both for being here. It was a lot of fun.
It was.